Good evening and welcome to the June 24th meeting of Municipal Council, which I will now call to order and ask if there are any declarations of interest from members of Council. Moving to item C, our land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nations and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and the environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. We will start with item D. We have no deputations on the agenda. I'll move to item E as presentations, and this is Corporate Services Presentation, Asset Management Plan.
Thank you. Good evening. Madam Chair and members of Council, I'm pleased to present the 2025 Asset Management Plan. Before I proceed, it's important to acknowledge that this plan was a collaborative effort involving colleagues in engineering and public works, fire and emergency service, parks, recreation and culture, finance and information technology, and a steering committee comprised of general managers of these areas. I would also like to acknowledge the support of Kevin Bernard and Stephanie Roll. Stephanie is in the audience today, and Kevin is online, who provided dedicated project support for this plan with input from these teams. PSD citywide drafted the plan, and we'll hear from them momentarily. As part of the agenda package, members of Council will have received the staff report that accompanies the asset management plan. Over the next several minutes, I'll be presenting the regulatory context and highlights of the asset management plan. Warren Marshall, General Manager Marshall, will introduce the findings from the study and financial strategy, and Israr Ahmed from PSD Citywide will present the findings and recommendations from the plan, and Israr Ahmed will be joining us virtually. I'll start with context. Ontario's Asset Management Plan for Municipal Infrastructure, Regulation OREG 588-17, enacted under the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act 2015, requires all municipalities to develop and implement asset management plans for their infrastructure. Despite these clear requirements, a significant challenge remains. The regulation does not prescribe standardized frameworks or methodologies for analyzing infrastructure assets, assessing condition and risk, or developing financial strategies. This lack of standardization leads to inconsistencies in how municipalities interpret and implement asset management planning. Different tools, models, and data collection methods are used, making it challenging to compare the quality, sustainability of asset management practices across municipalities. This also hampers efforts to benchmark infrastructure performance or financial readiness, as there's no common baseline or set of indicators. With that being said, we are presenting to you our asset management plan, which does reflect the best effort that municipal staff, along with PSD, put towards assessing the value of the assets and the condition of the assets. The asset management plan presented today meets the objective of OREG 588-17, and by submitting this document to the province, it helps us to qualify for various capital grants, such as the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. In accordance with the regulation, the 2025 AMP reflects 2023 data and a pay-for-what-we-use approach. I'm also pleased to announce that we recently filled the council-approved asset management lead position. Ishita Bahal joins us from a similar role in Brampton in the private sector before that. In her role, she will lead EG's asset management journey, which includes defining processes, refining data and the systems we use, training for staff, incorporating the financial strategy into asset management practices, and will lead future reports to council. So this may be it for me. And I welcome Ishita Bahal. She's in the audience today. This approach will also allow us to put a little bit more of the framework around the concepts that I mentioned earlier in terms of making sure that we instill stronger practices. The asset management plan requirements, according to the regulations, has been an evolving process. In 2023, we presented the current levels of service for core assets such as roads, bridges, culverts, and streetlights. In 2024, we presented the current levels of service for core and non-core assets, which includes vehicles and facilities. And this year's AMP takes the process further with the addition of proposed levels of service and a financial strategy. I'm sorry, I should have been asking to change the screen as we go along. I've added the context. That's the regulatory framework. The next slide there speaks to the evolution of the asset management plan and how different components have been added over time. So we're now up to date on the slides. So this chart reflects that evolution, and once submitted this asset management plan, the next asset management plan will be due in 5 years. That said, an asset management progress report is required every year. Next slide, please. And continue. Thank you. The 2025 AMP outlines strategies to maintain and improve assets, assess infrastructure, service levels, life cycle needs, and financial considerations, and ensure sustainable service delivery over the next 10 years. Next slide, please. This is a graph chart that I shared last year, and it's worth sharing again because it reflects how asset growth mirrors population growth, which is indicated by the red line. Next slide, please. The 2025 AMP reflects a current replacement cost of all assets at $2.93 billion, of which core assets represent 91% of the total value. Determining the total replacement cost of assets is a journey. Costs will increase as we acquire or replace assets, as market values change, and as we improve how we capture data, and as new information becomes available. Compared to last year's AMP, there is an increase in replacement costs, and this increase is primarily due to several factors: an improved GIS data set, which offers a more comprehensive and complete inventory of assets, updated user-defined replacement costs that reflect current market prices, and rising material costs. Next slide, please. Levels of service are the expected outcomes customers expect and the assets provide. Community levels of service are what residents expect. Residents expect clear roads, working streetlights, safe park equipment, clean drinking water. The technical levels of service measure the assets that deliver those services to the community. For example, one of the technical levels of services we use is the assessment of pipes that deliver clean drinking water. Next slide, please. So putting this all together, levels of service involves finding an appropriate balance between cost, risk, and performance to deliver reliable, safe, and high-quality infrastructure within budget. Achieving this balance helps ensure residents get optimal services without overspending or taking on unnecessary risks, maximizing the value of our assets and meeting community needs. I'll now speak to asset condition. So this slide speaks to asset condition. Asset condition is the current performance of an asset showing its ability to function reliably and safely. East Gwillimbury uses the Canadian Infrastructure Report Card, CIRC, a standardized grading system to evaluate asset condition. Next slide. Asset condition is determined in several ways: staff and third-party inspection using eyes on the asset, desktop audits using technologies such as closed-circuit television, and age with estimated useful life. Assessing the condition of assets is not new. In many instances, we're required to inspect assets for safety, and this includes vehicles, playgrounds, roads, bridges, and water and wastewater systems. I'll end at the next slide before turning it over to General Manager Marshall. And this, to me, is a critical piece of information. This is one of those, if there's one thing you remember in this presentation, what I'm going to talk about is probably it. So in developing the asset management plan, there's one key component of OREG 58817 that stood out, and this is it. So in a moment, Israr is going to be talking about proposed levels of service and the accompanying financial strategy. Both consider that proposed levels of services are demonstrated to be appropriate based on the assessment of the following, and this is according to the regulations. that the proposed level of service options either go up or down, increase, decrease, or maintain, and that there's an associated risk or evaluation of the associated risks. So the model I showed you in a few slides ago speaks to that balance. How the proposed levels of service differ from the current levels of service, the achievability of the proposed levels of service. So if we're at one point, so we have, let's say, fair level of service and we want excellent or very good level of service, is that actually achievable? And the municipality's financial capacity to afford the proposed levels of service. So with that, I'll now turn it over to General Manager Marshall, who will introduce PSD and ISRA from PSD and their analysis of the proposed levels of service and the related financial strategy.
Thank you, GM Gandhi. Before Israr from PSD does his presentation on the findings of the asset management plan that they developed, I'd just like to emphasize a couple of things. I don't have a slide for this, so I just wanted to emphasize a couple of things here. So one, this is a provincial requirement that has to be completed, and that allows us to start applying for provincial grants. The study reflects a point in time, so these results are going to change as we move forward in time. The study requires an identification of proposed level of service for town assets and a plan on how to fund that level of service over a 10-year period. And I want to emphasize the word plan because the decisions on actual infrastructure investments and the tax levy funding that's required for those investments will be made during the annual budget process. And the budget process takes into account things such as receiving grant funding, when we allocate our annual surpluses to asset management reserves, and interest earned on the reserves that all reduce the annual funding requirement. So all of this is to say that by endorsing the plan at this time, Council's not approving a tax levy increase. This is just a plan, and it will be informed during the annual budget process. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Israr.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present this plan. I'll get right into it. So what you're seeing on your screen is what I would consider one of the more critical levels of service indicators. So there's lots of metrics that, as you know, we can use to gauge performance. Condition of the asset or the performance of the assets is one of the central ones. It's a really good indicator to track how the municipality is doing over time and the user experience that residents have in East Gwillimbury. So what you're seeing on screen is a summary of all of the assets that we looked at as part of this asset management plan. And what that data analysis shows is that 93% of your assets are in fair or better condition. And a big tranche of that is actually in good condition. And you'll see a slight improvement from last year to this year. This is I'd say a fairly good news story. We work with many municipalities across Ontario and across Canada. And so we have a large sample of this. We don't have any official indicators, but we do keep track of different indicators across municipalities. And these kind of numbers certainly put you in that higher performance category when we do assess you against other municipalities. Now, there are some caveats associated with that. You're a rapidly growing municipality. Maybe a large percentage of your assets were put in place recently, whereas in other municipalities do carry older assets. But again, that's a good thing. It's going to give you some runway when we get into the financial strategy piece, which will show some annual infrastructure deficits. Next slide, please. So what you saw in the previous slide was your current performance. So as part of the regulation, the next thing to do is determine where we want to be. Do we want to increase condition ratings, decrease them on average, or maintain them? And again, the condition of the infrastructure is a really important indicator for us. And determining which direction we go into, increase, decrease, or maintain, is a collaborative exercise. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of math and modeling involved, but there's also a lot of collaboration that needs to happen between different stakeholders, which is what we went through. So subject matter expertise is vital to determining an appropriate service level. When we talk about assets that are in that fair condition, fair is usually stands out in our analysis because assets in this category can be on the precipice, basically. So they are maybe 1 or 2 years away from falling into that poor condition rating. And what that leads to is introduction of risks to residents, risks that are posed by perhaps assets that are failing, reaching the end of their useful life, and safety issues potentially. So if you're in this category, it's okay, but it doesn't give you that room to reduce that risk. Next slide, please. So what we did is we went through 4 different scenarios to figure out the appropriate balance of cost, performance, and risk. You can't eliminate risk entirely. However, unless you have unlimited funds, but you want to make sure that the levels of service you're providing to constituents is acceptable, it's good, it's high, but affordable. And that means giving up some things in favor of others. So we looked at 4 scenarios, and you can think of them as basically solving for X. So a couple of scenarios say, let's start off with a certain funding level and see what happens to our condition over time. And the converse of that is, let's set a target of a condition on average for all of our assets and determine what kind of funding we need. The very first scenario you're looking at there is your current capital funding available, which is about 10.3 million. And if you maintain that, so now this is that idea that let's start with some funding level and see what happens. At that funding level, what happens is that your average condition rating for your assets degrades down to a poor by 2051. It seems like it's very far away, and it probably is in some ways, but things catch up very, very soon. And the risks you assume there are service disruptions, potentially even safety hazards, and of course, higher maintenance costs. When we set a fair condition rating, so our input now is fair. Let's see what happens to our annual requirements. Your annual requirements go up to about a 12.1 million. So now we're keeping those assets in fair condition, but again, you're reducing that room you might have to contain some of those risks, because again, some of those assets may be just on the precipice of falling into that poor condition rating. The 4th scenario, I'll skip over the 3rd one. The 4th one says, you know what, let's see what happens if we got all the money that we need. And at this level, that 48.6 million on average, you are maintaining assets in a very good condition throughout the asset's lifespan. And what that means is that as assets needs are due in a given year, whether it's rehabilitation, replacement, you are able to maintain those needs as they arise for every single asset. So this is that gold standard, which is almost always unachievable for municipalities. I shouldn't even say almost, it's always unachievable for municipalities, at least based on our sample. So based on the collaboration, the recommended approach for your consideration is scenario 3, which says we're going to target an average condition rating of good across our asset portfolio. And at that level, we need $16.6 million on average every year. And at this funding level, we can hit that good condition rating by 2051 on average for our asset portfolio. Next slide, please. You can skip the next one as well. So that was part 1. Part 1 is let's figure out where we want to go. The next part is how do we get there? And the financial component is really the engine of asset management programs, along with people and systems. But this is where you make things happen. So as part of OREG, you do need to set proposed levels of service for each asset category. And then, of course, developing a suitable financial strategy. Now, the tricky thing here, which we found with every municipality we worked with that has faced a deficit, which is, I want to say all of them, is that you can reduce your infrastructure deficits very quickly by placing a fairly high financial burden on residents, or you can drag it out for many decades lower the burden, but see your assets fall into a state of disrepair. So it becomes a bit of an art and a bit of science to try to find that balance between the two, those phasing periods. And again, there's no mathematical standard, there's no industry standard that says this is how fast you should close your infrastructure deficits. This is the optimal level of burden to place on residents. You know this very well. You deal directly with or work directly with constituents. So we have to find some kind of a compromise between how fast we introduce funding for our assets versus how much we are willing to let the assets deteriorate. Next slide, please. Before we get into what that looks like, this is a fairly useful graph to understand. What you're seeing is peaks and valleys for all of the infrastructure that we analyzed and the requirements that are associated with it. So you'll see that red dotted line that says 48.6 million. And again, what that says is that those peaks and valleys are manageable at that funding level on average. Now, just as it's illustrated, in any given 5-year period, how much you need will differ. It's not always going to be 48.6 million, but on average, if you are allocating that much on an annual basis, you can meet these replacements or rehabilitation needs. Our target is that lower 16.6 million, which means that on average, you're not going to meet all of them, but your average condition will be good. Next slide, please. So what does the financial strategy look like if we establish or adopt that good condition rating as the average for our assets? That means we need about $16.6 million. Now, we are allocating, as you saw, 10.3 million, so there's a bit of a gap. And this is not unusual for municipalities. You're funding 21% of needs, and that it sounds low. Mathematically it is, but there's lots of caveats and nuances behind that. One I mentioned earlier, which is the rapid growth of the of East Gwillimbury and the associated infrastructure that's been needed. So, other municipalities may have higher funding levels, but they haven't had the luxury of building their capacities up over many decades. You faced the need to make investments and also keep up with funding. The good news is that, as we saw, 93% of your assets are in fair or better condition. So you have some time to reach higher funding levels and go above that 21%, which is our intention, by the way, to slowly and incrementally close that gap. But again, that requires those phase-in periods. And in this case, to hit that good condition rating by 2051, we need to enact a tax increase of 1.57% on an annual basis over a 10-year period. Next slide, please. This slide shows the comparison between the full life cycle scenario, which I mentioned, says that we have lots and lots of money. We're going to allocate $48.6 million versus targeting good condition rating. So that 72.5 is a one-time increase. So if you could wave a wand and just automatically, magically generate 72.5% additional revenues from your property taxes, that's what that increase is, but that doesn't happen. So over a 10-year lifespan or a 10-year phasing period, to hit that full life cycle scenario, you need a 5.6% annual increase, which again can be prohibitive, which is why we try to balance the cost, performance, and risk of the assets. So it's not just about assets being in great condition, it's also about what's affordable. And the balance we found was at that good condition scenario, which means a one-time increase of 16.8%, which doesn't happen in real life. So what that means on a 10-year period is a 1.6% annual increase, which is our recommended path. This only shows the impact on tax-funded assets. So water, wastewater, or storm are separate. They're undergoing their separate analysis, which will be forthcoming. And the impact on the respective financial strategies for these assets will be determined as part of that initiative. Next slide, please. This is you saw that longer horizon peaks and valleys of replacements and rehabilitation needs a few slides ago. This is a condensed, zoomed in version of that. So this shows a 10-year period in alignment with the regulation. And what it shows is the impact of increasing the revenues by 1.57 or rounded off to 1.6% every year for the next 10 years. And those blue bar graphs you're seeing are the East Gwillimbury reaching the $13 million associated with its tax funding. So that 16.6 was a combination of tax and water. But as I mentioned, the water, wastewater, and storm are going through their separate analysis. So this graph is showing only the tax funded needs. What that shows is that by 2034, you hit that $13 million based off of that increase. The assumption, of course, is that that increase, the net new revenue goes towards these infrastructure classes. Next slide, please. So recommendations, I mean, the financial side is one thing, it's the driving factor behind asset management programs, but there's other aspects involved to maintaining good asset management systems. So broader recommendations, number one, the recommendation for condition ratings is suggested as good. This applies to all of your infrastructure portfolio. This is where that balance of cost, performance, and risk is achieved. If this is adopted, the impact on the funding is as follows. Your increase in annual capital funding will go from 10.3 million to 16.6, and this will require a 1.6% yearly tax levy over the 10-year period. The other two big pieces are that big check mark there. This is a constant refrain that we have with municipalities, which is continued data and process improvements. The AMP, the recommendations are predicated on really solid inventory data, which, if we look at East Gwillimbury's data, there are tens of thousands of data points, and they need to be vetted, verified, and reviewed. So a lot of effort goes into making sure that the recommendations brought forward are credible and reliable, but they are evolving. So every year you get better and better, and your forecasts evolve. So this is, the staff doing homework. This is why investments into this aspect of asset management programs is so vital. And then in compliance with the regulation, there's that annual review, which just lets us know how we're progressing against our asset management plans, any challenges that we're facing, and how we are planning on overcoming those challenges. And I believe, next slide, that's it. That's it for me, and happy to take any questions or comments.
Mr. CAO, go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, I'm just wondering if the clerks could just put up slide 23 again for a moment, if in the presentation.
Just bear with us for a moment.
So I just so there's no confusion, Mr. Marshall had said earlier, I just want to repeat something he said earlier because I think it's really important. When it says total tax levy increase required and annual tax levy increase required, it's an equivalency. In other words, if 1.6% equates to plus minus $450,000, it's saying we need an additional $450,000. If we happen to receive infrastructure grants that year, that would reduce the amount that we would be looking to find. If we have additional amounts that come in out of year-end surplus in a given year, that would potentially reduce the amount that we need to find. So just want to be clear that this is equivalency as opposed to that it will be automatic. Mr. Marshall indicated it earlier, but just so there's no confusion on slide 23, and you'll see the same reference on slide 25 if you go 2 slides ahead. Just for a moment, in required funding, talks about 1.6% yearly tax levy. Again, that's equivalency. So amount-wise, at this point in time, based on current tax levy, that's about $450,000. And we do have some options in terms of where we can find that funding. However, to the degree that we can't find it elsewhere, it would get funded through tax levy. So I just wanted to sort of emphasize that point that Mr. Marshall made earlier. Thank you.
questions, anyone? Councillor Johns, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and I'll say through you, but I'm not sure to specifically if it is ISRA or Finance or Ms. Gandhi. So I'm looking at page 16. If we are looking at the slides, it's page 23 of the 324, but it's page 16 of the slide deck, and I'm just trying to get my head around. So on the very good, we're demonstrating currently today of our town assets of the 1.8 billion. That makes up 63%, and then good, 500 million. So my question is, there's the small red section of the very poor, and very poor only makes up 3% of our assets, which is excellent. However, like very poor represents 95.4 million. So I'm trying to get my head around the presentation where it speaks to, we're speaking about the equivalency as CEO Valchik has referenced, essentially the 450 million. What are we doing from a strategy perspective on that 95.4 million as it is today on the very poor? Is there remediation tactics that we have in place that we're executing to extend that life, or how is the now getting addressed is really what I'm trying to get to, as opposed to 10 years from now or 2051. How is the now getting addressed? Because I don't know that we have an operating budget of 35 million. 95 million is a large number for East Gwillimbury.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll start with the answer and then I'll pass it to others if they have anything to add. The really important context here, Councillor Johns, is that this is a 2023, these are 2023 data. So it's entirely possible if those were vehicles that had reached end of life, then they're probably no longer with the town. You'll note that there were a number of bridges under repair in 2024. They were likely in a category of being poor or very poor. And so existing reserves that were used to address those costs and/or those items were replaced through other capital sources. That's how those items were addressed. So the point to stress is that this is at a point in time. The very next day, the number could be a little bit different. So I'll leave it at that, and I don't know if either General Manager Marshall or Isra has anything to add to that.
Through the chair, thanks, Peter. I'll just add one or two comments there. So that poor and that very poor condition rating, and this applies to other condition classifications as well. Sometimes the condition of the assets can be estimated through age. And what that means is that we assume older assets must be in a condition that they can no longer be serviceable. And that's not always the case. So that kind of analysis can help us temper the, I guess, the scary stuff, the red and the orange sections there. The other thing to look at is the risk models that are associated with infrastructure. So just because an asset is in poor condition, even if it is assessed as being in poor condition, we do have to spend money selectively. So we do prioritize assets based not just on their condition ratings, but also based on how important they are to a community, a municipality. So sometimes it's just an age issue, that older assets in the absence of condition data, and by that I mean someone actually going out, having a detailed assessment of the asset. If we don't have that, sometimes we use age as a proxy of very poor or of condition ratings. And age does tend to overstate asset needs sometimes. And that's why condition assessments become very important. So as Mita said, if some vehicles, let's say, were in very poor condition, staff would have assessed those and prioritize them based on need and criticality, and then appropriate investments are typically made. But again, we do have to be selective in which assets we tackle. The needs are so large, as you know better than anyone.
General Manager Marshall, go ahead, please.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just one other thing to put out there is that our 10-year capital plan would be focused on addressing those poor and very poor assets. And so that would be our focus on the 10 years, so that would get addressed first.
Go ahead, Councillor Johns.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I just want to say that I do have a couple follow-up questions, but in the interest of time, I'll just simply follow up with staff offline for that. So thank you, Madam Mayor, for the time.
Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. Would it be possible to expand upon the future incorporation of water, wastewater, and stormwater, and any implications that might have that we need to keep in mind?
General Manager Marshall, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So we are required every 5 years to do a water and wastewater financial plan and rate study. And our plan is due in 2025. So in the fall, you will see a study come in front of you, which outlines the amount of funding that is required to keep our water and wastewater assets in a sustainable condition over a 10-year period. So that will be addressed in the fall. And for our stormwater, there's a master plan exercise that is taking place, and the results of that master plan will inform the funding requirements that would be needed. So those things are to follow.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Crone.
Thank you,
Go ahead,
Madam
please.
Mayor. My first observation is I was very delighted to hear that EG was in one of the higher performance categories of all the different municipalities that you've worked with. So that's good news. I know. I think this is a topic that many of us here are concerned about because it's going to have long-term implications and you know, not inconsequential amounts of money involved with it. So I appreciate, Mr. Velchich, you answered one of my questions about provincial grants would offset some of the needs during that year. So, you know, if we just get provincial grants every year, we'll be laughing. But barring that, I'm hoping you can educate me on the estimated 1.6% increase in property taxes that we need to take every year. Is that based on a flat growth rate in our assessment base, or is it baking in future growth? How did we come up with that number?
Through
Mr.
you, Madam
Marshall,
Mayor.
go ahead.
Go.
Yes.
We'll let-
Sorry, Warren, you proceed.
Go.
Okay, yes, so that does reflect your existing tax base and your existing assets. So as you assume new assets, you know, part of those will be funded by developers, but part of that you'll have to supplement yourself. And as you assume those assets, they themselves will carry new annual requirements, which will require additional funding, as you know. So you bring on a new asset, you now have to account for its replacement as it reaches the end of its life. So this reflects the sort of the current state of the municipality today.
Okay, that's good. That helps. My basic understanding of math, though, if we continue to grow and we're putting in newer infrastructure, which will require replacement or repair down the road, as long as we're growing, we're in pretty good shape. But the moment we plateau, that's where the money crunch comes. Have I got that right? Or is that too simplistic?
Through you, Madam Mayor. It's not too simplistic. I think it's just a bit more. So as you grow, the only way to say that we are okay is if your infrastructure base is not changing. If your infrastructure is also growing with growth of the community, then you need more and more funds. That's just the nature of it. So this assumes that this reflects your current state, your current portfolio, your current community. As you grow, it depends on which infrastructure grows with it. So your needs will not stay stable. Your annual requirements, so let's say we stick to that good condition rating of that 16.6 million. If you have new assets put in place, you'll be okay temporarily. But if you want to maintain that good condition rating, more than 16.6 million will be needed. So the new residents that move into the community will have to be able to support the new infrastructure that you assume.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Crothers, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation and everyone who's worked on it. I know this is a tremendous amount of work. When I'm looking at the different levels, of course, we want very good, but it's not affordable. So I think the good condition is a good target for us. And obviously, it doesn't mean that everything is good. There's still, like, as we currently have, there's the bulk of it is very good, with some small exceptions being poor. As we move forward on this, what does that look like? Because I don't want a situation where the poor category and very poor is growing, but we're talking about an average of good. So I'm just wondering if we can get a little bit more of an explanation on that. And then the second part of this is when we do drill down and get a better idea of what we need, I'm very interested in what's in that poor and very poor category. Because I think of, in my household, if my dryer is in poor condition, it's not really a big deal. I can hang things on the line. If my roof is in poor condition, that's a problem. So I think it's important for us to understand what is in that very poor category. If it's a playground in a park that's rarely used, but it's still fine, and it's only there because of age, that's one thing. If it's an important asset, then that's another problem. So I'm wondering if you can just provide a little bit more context on the averaging of these resources.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It's a great question and a really good analysis towards the end there. So yes, I'll touch on that very poor category first. All the details, the breakdowns are in your asset management plan. So I would recommend perhaps going through that and just skimming through some of those fancy charts and graphs we've put in. But you're exactly right, is that the very poor and the poor number seems very scary and intimidating, and it always is for municipalities. But the second we begin to apply those risk frameworks to it, which is exactly as you said, is it a vehicle? Is it or versus a fire truck? Is it a bridge that services a large group of people, or is it a small crossing? Those are things that you can use to temper the annual requirements as well, but that does require lots of collaboration and staff judgment in any given year because needs can be evolving. So the numbers you see are on average. The target of good condition rating is also on average, which does mean that some assets might be on the poor side in that 25-year time frame, and some assets are very good. But our intention is to get that average to be good.
So will we be seeing, when we're going forward, seeing a report that shows exactly which assets are poor or very poor? Because I would like to have some eyes on that to make sure that, like, I'm fine if it's something that's not used very much and not essential, is in poor condition and it's waiting for funding, it's going to be replaced, it's on the plan, but have a problem if it's, like you said, a fire truck that's in very poor condition. So will we see a list of exactly what those assets are?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So all of the information is available in our in the School and Berry's asset management system. So we have a detailed record of every single asset that was used to develop this plan, all of its condition ratings, and all of their associated risk ratings as well, and staff do have access to it. But again, as you know, with models, they capture a lot, but they can't capture everything, which is where that annual reviews, those collaborations with staff are vital, and certainly with your input on actually from a community side where you intend to be becomes more and more critical as well. So details are available and they are available to use at staff's discretion.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
General Manager Gandhi, you had some comments?
Just to add to that, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just in terms of listings, at Councillor Crothers, we have things like vehicles, as I mentioned, bunker gear sets, some bridges. So these are the elements that I mentioned in terms of the 2023 data, which in many cases are either under repair or replaced at this point. And in terms of eyes on those assets, 100%, we are taking very careful care, and that's part of the role of the new asset management lead in terms of coordinating with departments and supporting the finance department in preparation for future budgets.
Councillor Roy DiClemente?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this, and the challenge being that we've got a very short timeline for approval, this is our last meeting before July 1st, and so I feel like we've just scratched the surface, and we've really only just taken a snapshot, which was the bare minimum that was needed for the province's requirements. And it seems to me that we need to be taking into account not just that 10-year cycle, but the entire life cycle of our assets. And some of our assets last a few months or a year or so, and others last 50 or more. And so if we're looking at how we're spreading out the way that we're using those assets, maybe there's a way of spreading out the expenses of saving to replace them. So for me, I can see that Ms. Bahal is taking copious notes, and what I would like to see, obviously today we're in a bit of a time crunch with the legislative deadline, but for us, I'd like to see this come back to us with more time to discuss, a little bit more detail in it, so that we can understand a little bit more how this affects our budget cycles, and also just to understand take into account the entire life cycle. And it's to Councillor Carruthers' point, where if it's the roof, it's supposed to have a long tail. But if it's a book in our library, we understand that covers rip, and that's okay. So, I guess from my perspective, I'm okay to move forward with this, with the proviso that we're not raising taxes by a certain amount of money over 10 years, but simply that the amount of money that we have to find to address the infrastructure gap is the order of magnitude that's described by that sort of tax increase. So, from my perspective, that's just where I'm sitting, is I feel like we've just barely scratched the surface, and we need to do a lot more in-depth work on these models. Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Oh, I was waiting for you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I look at this stuff and I think that this is another exercise that the provincial government has thrown at us that is a good roadmap for us going forward. To go to Councillor Carruthers' point, the important stuff is what we're going to see during the budget cycle. All our general managers are going to come to us with a business case for the things that they need to be replaced most. And quite frankly, I think that means more to me than this. This is a great roadmap, but it certainly doesn't tell us what we have to do. Our general managers that we rely on for their expertise, I think, goes a lot further. Yes. Just my 2 cents on I think we've wasted enough time on this. Let's go.
Are there others that would like to speak as well? I'm not seeing any others. Could I have a motion to,
Happy to move.
thank you. Councillor Carruthers? Yeah. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Madam Mayor, we do have the report under K1, and since we've talked about it at length, I'm happy to move that at the same time.
Is that a motion to move it up and then we'll consider it after? Yep. Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. This is Corporate Services Report to CS 2025-06 Asset Management Plan. Refer to staff to provide an overview. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor, go ahead. Be it resolved that Corporate Services Report CS 2025-06 dated June 24th, 2025, entitled Asset Management Plan be received, and that Council approve the 2025 Asset Management Plan, and that Council direct staff to circulate this report to the Ministry of Infrastructure and post the 2025 Asset Management Plan on the website in accordance with Ontario Regulation 58817. All those in favor? And that's carried. We're now at item F, and that is to adopt the Committee of the Whole Council recommendation from the meeting held on June 3rd, 2025. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Foster. You're going to separate one? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to separate, these are the CWC recommendations from June 3rd. I'd like to separate number 130 out, which is just a one for a separate vote regarding placing a hold on lots in Sharon Village.
Yeah. I'm going to work with all of them. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Pardon? Except for 130. Council, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Madam Mayor, you're now dealing with the recommendation that was separated out. That's CWC 2025-130. So you would need a mover and a seconder for that.
Seconder, please. Councillor, go ahead. Thank you. Councillor Crothers? Sure. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. We're at item 2 to adopt the Committee of the Whole Council recommendations from the meeting held on June 24th, 2025. I'll now ask staff to share the recommendations on the screen for us to review.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just in terms of a context, there were 3 items that required same-day ratification from this morning, earlier this afternoon's committee meeting. So they're on the screen and highlighted in blue.
Do all members have it in the highlighted in blue? Sure.
Madam Mayor, can we vote on them separately? I think right now they're just sort of jumbled together as a big green-blue blob, and I'm just,
Certainly.
might be nice if we understood. Yes, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor, just bear with us as we separate them out, and we will reshare that on the screen.
Okay, item number 2, to adopt the Committee of the Whole Council recommendations from the meeting held on June 24th, 2025, moved by Councillor Leahy, seconded by Councillor Foster. Thank you. Be it resolved that council adopt the committee of the whole recommendations from the meeting held on June 24th, 2025 as follows. Be it resolved that the Integrity Commissioners update council and committee code of contact dated June 24th, 2025 be received, and that council approve the updated council and committee code of conduct, and that the recommendations of this report be ratified at the council meeting to be held on June 24th, 2025. All those in favor? That's carried. We're preparing the three of them, so the next one is coming shortly.
Madam Mayor, this is relatively longer, but let us know when to scroll down if it's...
Be it resolved that Development Services,
Madam Mayor,
yes. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to request a recorded vote, please.
I'm happy to move it, Madam Mayor, and I suspect Councillor Leahy or,
Seconding it?
yeah.
Thank you. Councilor, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Just before you call the vote, now that it's been moved and seconded and it's tabled out there, I think that the opportunity, should we have the opportunity to be able to have South Lake located here in East Gwillimbury, it would be an incredible gift and a historic event for us in East Gwillimbury. And given the vote this afternoon by my colleagues, I would look forward and welcome to champion the opportunity to have a sound fiscal framework in place as we go forward, and I'd love to be a part of that, and it would be great to be able to do that as a council as a whole. So I'm going to be voting yes, Madam Mayor.
Through Madam Mayor, this item has been moved by Councillor Roy DeClemente, seconded by Councillor Leahy, and Councillor Leahy has requested for a recorded vote. So at this time, Councillor Leahy, how do you vote?
Yes?
Councillor Carruthers, how do you vote?
Yes?
Councillor Roy DeClemente, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Crone, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Foster, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Haxton, how do you vote?
Yes,
Councillor Johns, how do you vote?
Yes.
Through Madam Mayor, that motion is carried unanimously.
thank you very much.
And there is one more from this afternoon. We'll bring that up on the screen.
Madam Mayor, I would be happy to move this motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Roy DeClemente. Be it resolved that development, I'll just call the vote on this one. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Madam Mayor, just I'm mindful that there is a bylaw accompanying this particular last item, so that will be added as bylaw number 20. It will be the number 6 bylaw that you would consider this afternoon.
This is item G to adopt the committee of the whole council minutes from the meeting held on June 3rd, 2025. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Carruthers, Councillor Crone. Be it resolved that council adopt the committee of the whole minutes from the meeting held on June 3rd, 2025. All those in favor? And that's carried. Item number 2 is adopt the minutes from the meeting held on June 3rd. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Carruthers. Councillor Foster. Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. And item number H, as our statutory public meeting. Members of the public, this portion of the council meeting is a statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. The purpose of this meeting is to inform and obtain public input on the planning application received by the town prior to a full technical analysis be conducted by staff. No decision to approve or refuse the application will be made here tonight. Following the applicant's presentation, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments respecting the proposal. Submissions can also be made in writing to planning@eastgwillimbury.ca. If you plan to speak at this meeting, or if you wish to be notified of any future council meetings concerning this application, please complete a form located at the desk in the back of the council chambers. I will now ask the General Manager of Development Services to introduce the 3 applications before us.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of the initial presentation or memorandum is to solicit council and public feedback on a zoning bylaw amendment application made by official plan amendment made by Groundswell Urban Planners on behalf of their applicant. The applicant is here in the crowd with us today, as well as Norbedas from Groundswell Planners to give us a presentation as well. The current applications are, there's an application before us for a phase 2 of the proposed development and for a phase 3 of the development. The phase 2, purpose of the phase 2 is to expand the list of permitted uses within the neighborhood commercial designation. And as well as on phase 3, there is additional uses also included in the zoning bylaw amendment. So at this point in time, I will pass it along to Noor to be able to provide a presentation to members of council. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of council, before the consulting team presents the application, I would like to tell council that we did have a community information meeting about these applications almost a year to the day ago at the Holland Landing Community Center, which was extremely well attended. And we presented the applications as we saw them at that point in time. And we heard a number of very firm points being made by the community that we created and built houses for, what they thought could be improved in the applications. We've been working through the technical aspects of the application, but we've also been looking at the overarching nature of the development that should take place on these lands. And we've made 4 significant changes, and I would like to acknowledge the work that Councillor Carruthers and Councillor Foster did in helping me to understand what the issues were with the community and how we could improve the applications. So you will hear in the 2 presentations that we have removed a number of the uses that we had asked for that I would characterize as industrial or manufacturing uses, and we have acknowledged that these really do not have a place in this community. And so we have restricted our application to what I would call benign uses, the existing permitted uses, and we have asked that warehousing and assembly of goods and benign uses such as that to reflect how the public orders goods and how they're stored and shipped. So we have made those adjustments to the application. We thank Councillor Carruthers for letting me know how difficult the word industrial was for the community, and we acknowledge that and we have addressed that. The other thing we have done is to prioritize the applications differently. We were thinking of starting at the North Block, and we heard from the community that they were very interested in having the South Block developed with the uses that they saw us propose, and there was a lot of encouragement and acknowledgement that these were uses that they would like to see there. So we have determined that we will prioritize, we will build the south block first and follow along with the north block later. The other issue that came up was for the new intersection at the north limit of the north parcel and how that was going to function. I'm very pleased to say that the Region of York is beginning construction on that signalized intersection now. We have contributed over $1 million to the construction of this intersection, which will contain the traffic at the north end and with a new taper lane to accommodate the traffic that will use this north block. And you'll hear our traffic engineer describe that. And the last improvement we've made, with thanks again to the input from Councillor Crothers and Foster, is that we have created more visual, pleasing vistas that you will hear our landscape and urban design and building architect describe to you in his presentation. So with thanks to staff for their patience as these applications evolved, and as we sorted out what they once were and what they could be, and now I hope we're at the point where we know what they will be and that people will appreciate the effort that has been expended. So I'll turn it over to Groundswell, who will manage the presentation. Thank you, Madam.
Welcome, good to have you with us this evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Noor Baidas, and I'm a senior planner at Groundswell Urban Planners. And I'm joined tonight by one of the partners and another senior planner, Kerrigan Kelly. And I'll be taking you through some of the planning policy considerations for the proposed application. We do note that an updated presentation was provided and want to highlight that some of the following changes, the order of the slides were slightly modified to align with who will be presenting later on. And the context plan was replaced with a more up-to-date version. Next slide, please. The site is approximately 7.02 hectares and is located at the northeast corner of Highway 11 and Crimson King Way, which is a key intersection in the community with access from both Highway 11 and Crimson King Way. This particular application is for the southerly portion of this site, which is outlined on this plan, which I'll get into a bit more detail in subsequent slides. Next slide, please. The property is outlined in red, and you'll notice that the divide of the site with the northern portion in blue and the southern portion in pink. The portion of the site being discussed tonight is the southern portion of this site, the pink area with the purple strip along Highway 11 and on the north side of Crimson King Way. So per the town's official plan, the site is designated community area, which is the pink portion, and is situated along a local corridor for the portion along Highway 11. This corridor is intended to accommodate mixed-use development and evolve over time to include commercial, employment, and service uses to support a complete community. There is employment to the north, northeast, and south, and there is existing residential community to the east. Next slide, please. The site falls within the Holland Landing secondary plan area, and as the site is dually designated, you'll see that the site has two colors and designations as shown on this site. The portion of the site being discussed tonight is in purple, which is the neighborhood commercial designation. You'll note the prestige employment to the north, northeast, and south, which aligns with the designations of the official plan. There is low density residential to the east. Next slide, please. The site also has two zones which align with the official plan and the secondary plan as previously shown. The application covers the portion of the site zone C4, which is neighborhood commercial, to enable more consistency with respect to uses within the site. There is in prestige employment zoning M1 to the north and south, and the R2 residential zones to the east. Next slide. This is a site plan that was submitted with the application and does show the enhanced landscaping, which will be discussed later on. It's oriented differently than the previous slides. So Crimson King is on the right and Highway 11 is on the bottom. There are 3 proposed buildings included with this application, so buildings A, B, and C. Building A has approximately 173,000 square feet, Building C with approximately 50,000 square feet, and Building C with just over 93,000 square feet. There is the enhanced landscaping along the exterior sections of the site, specifically along the top there, which is adjacent to the stormwater management pond. You'll also note that the red line bisecting the plan is where the site is split in 2 in terms of the official plan, secondary plan, and zoning bylaws shown previously. Next slide, please. So this context plan shows the internal road network and is designed with 3 access points, 2 from Crimson King and 1 from Highway 11. This slide provides an overall context for how this site and the retail block to the south are aligned with each other, which will be discussed in the next presentation. Next slide, please. So a number of supporting studies were included with the application, including elevations, transportation impact, soil investigations, functional storm water management servicing and stormwater management report, the demographic and market analysis report, a planning justification, and a supplementary matrix with additional zoning information. These all confirm the development is feasible and meets the town's planning and engineering standards. Next slide, please. So as shown in the previous slides, the site has dual zones and dual designations. The site plan with the red line identified the limits of the employment and commercial permissions on the site. The proposed uses are currently permitted within the northern portion of the site, furthest from Crimson King Way. The portion of the site that is nearest Crimson King is the portion of the property where the amendment is required to permit these proposed uses throughout the site as shown on the site plan. The amendment also considers site-specific zoning standards to accommodate the proposed buildings. Next slide, please. So we've recently received circulation comments, and they include notes on pedestrian connectivity, adequate servicing, site circulation, adequate bicycle parking, amongst other items. And we are reviewing and addressing technical comments in coordination with internal departments and external agencies. For next steps in the planning process, we'll address the technical and public comments with staff and as part of the formal recirculation process. From there, staff will prepare a recommendation report to council for their final decision. So next up, we have Tony Baldessera to review some of the renderings. And then following that, Mike Oldham from WSB will be discussing the intersection design along Highway 11 and Crimson King Way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, members of council, my name is Tony Baldessera. I'm with Baldessera Architects, and we've done a number of projects in East Gwillimbury which are under construction, and I'm sure you're quite proud of. We certainly bring a lot of experience in this field of development. If I can go back to the site plan, because I do want to draw your attention to some of the critical aspects that we sort of touched upon. Actually, the next one to this one here, which I think are rather important and that we've often come across as discussions when we're master planning a site of this nature. So if I can draw your attention to the screen, Noor described the overall components of the overall site, and some of the things that are critical here, the buildings all are outward looking, meaning that from a passerby, nobody really sees, you know, sort of the messy parts of the site. So all the internal, all the noise generated activities are all internal that are buffered by the rear building and also the front buildings. And as people are making their way into the subdivision, we've actually created a tremendous amount of buffer to be able to hide whatever happens internally between the buildings. Secondly, the access from a vehicular perspective in terms of servicing that will be elaborated a little next to the discussion here is the new signalized intersection, which basically brings the trucks and all the garbage removal, et cetera, internal from the buildings, essentially from that new access point, which actually is a very, very plus factor. And then the other aspect that I do want to touch upon is the fact that, you know, we've created a development which is, in our perspective, within a park setting, and the amount of landscaping that we've actually added to this whole plan is by far greater than what we typically provide in a development of this nature. So you'll see that on the illustrations that I will show you next, which basically show a tremendous amount of landscaping, not only along Crimson, but also facing the stormwater management pond and also what's along the Yonge Street arterial. If we can go to the illustrations, the 3D illustrations, and I'll touch upon some of the materials and some of the warmth that we brought into the buildings to be able to sort of add and complement the entry, which is the design feature that we have here into the Hillsborough development, which is obviously Crimson Lane here, and the building itself, lots of glass, lots of windows, so that it's not looking like a major box. So on the building facing Yonge Street, you can see there, and if you go to the next slide, the rear building, which is actually sort of overlooking the stormwater management pond, there's a tremendous amount of articulation, which is really the building that the residents are going to be looking at, which not only have we articulated it with a lot of materials and forms, but at the same time, we've augmented a tremendous amount of landscaping, which will put it in that so-called park setting look. So that pretty well gives you a quick synopsis of the building forms themselves. And that's all I have to present at this time. If there are any questions, or I'll turn it over to Mike Oldham, and he can talk about the traffic intersection.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. Mike Oldham, I'm VP at WSP and probably formerly, no more formally as MMM Group. We've done a lot of work in the town historically. Only one drawing, very brief discussion. Early on in the project, we had discussions with the Region of York to add a signalized intersection at this entrance. Working with the region, we were able to get it incorporated with their current construction program on Yonge Street Highway 11. Last thing we wanted to do is have them complete their work, and then we were in tearing it up immediately after. So as Joanne spoke to, they have provided the funds for the intersection, and it is included in their current project, and it will be a full move signalized intersection constructed well in advance of the buildings moving forward. The one other note I would make is that with that, we have created the platform for the town's ultimate MUP that will be added onto Yonge Street. That'll occur in the future. Thank you.
We appreciate your time, and we're here to listen. However, there is another presentation, and we defer to you your preferred process in terms of taking questions now or taking them all after you hear the second presentation for the site on the south side of Crimson King.
What's the preference for members of council?
So through you, Madam Mayor, if, sorry, members of council can maybe entertain us in this, and we can go through the second presentation, because there is a little bit of overlap, and then we can take questions from council, because they are the same question, subject matter. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. All right, well, thank you again. Yes, hi, I'm Noor Bedas. I still have the same team here. And thank you again for listening to both presentations and taking all questions at the end. So I thank you to Mr. Krupnik for noting that the presentations will have quite a lot of overlap, so I'll try to keep it brief and avoid repetition where possible. All right, next slide. So this site is located on the southeast corner of Crimson King Way and Highway 11, and it is bound by low-density residential to the south and east and commercial to the north, and there is vacant undeveloped land to the west. Next slide, please. So per the town's official plan, the site is designated employment area, which is indicated in blue, and there is community area residential to the east, north, and south, which is the pink areas. Also note the local corridor designation, the purple along Highway 11. Next slide, please. Per the town's official plan, the site is designated employment area. Next slide. All right. So the site in blue is designated as prestige employment in the Holland Landing secondary plan. There is neighborhood commercial to the north, which is the purple, and the low density residential to the east, the yellow. Next slide. So this is the town's zoning bylaw. The site is designated M1, which is in prestige employment with special provisions and holding provisions. There is the C4 neighborhood commercial to the north and the R2 residential zones to the east and south. Next slide, please. So this is a site plan with Crimson King at the top, which is to the north, and Highway 11 on the left to the west. We're proposing 6 buildings, including a drive-through restaurant, a motor vehicle gas bar, and kiosk, a car wash, and 3 buildings which allow for a proposed range of commercial, employment, and retail uses, in addition to the existing uses currently permitted. This site also includes 2 access points, one from Crimson King and one from Highway 11. Next slide, please. So as before, this is the context plan that we thought would be helpful to show how the lands on both sides of Crimson King work together and will function. The first item on the agenda is there on the left, and this is the second item to the right on the south side of Crimson King. Next slide, please. Again, a number of supporting studies were included that support the application, including transportation impact study, the demographic and market analysis, and a planning justification report. Next slide, please. So as noted, the proposed uses are largely permitted. The application before you today is to request that these proposed retail and commercial uses are standalone uses with site-specific provisions to facilitate the development of these largely retail uses. Next slide, please. As before, we are continuing to work through the comments that we've received, and will be providing a resubmission and continue to work with town staff to address the technical comments. Tony will, Mr. Baldessera will provide some context in terms of the next 2 slides on the renderings.
Thank you, and Madam Mayor and members of council again. Let's walk through on the commercial site, and again, what I want to do is simply offer some of the experiences. And if we go back to the large site plan, the one before this one, because I think there are things here that will always be important in terms of respecting the neighborhood and the residential. And again, with this plan, we've positioned the buildings so that we use the buildings as a buffer between what typically is sort of the obnoxious areas or the areas that would basically generate some noise, some lighting and whatever, and basically fronted buildings that would respect the residential across the street. The garbage, the servicing will all happen internal to the site. So in other words, it's not facing the residential, which is very, very important. And of course, all the circulation is all off of Highway 11 or Crimson King. There is absolutely no access other than pedestrian walkways, so that anybody in the neighborhood that basically wants to go to the convenience plaza can actually walk between the buildings. And we've got a walkway coming through here, good pedestrian access, which will make it very functional and very attractive. So if we can go to the 3D illustrations, this is the view actually in terms of what the residents will be looking at. So we've carefully not put any signage, any lighting that would sort of become, fairly loud facing the residential. So lots of articulation. We've used brick in this particular and stone just to sort of heighten up the quality of the buildings so that it doesn't look like a plaza that came out of nowhere. And if you go to the next slide, and again, the portion that faces Yonge Street or Crimson Lane or Crimson King as you come into the subdivision, you can see that the articulation with the signage and landscaping, again, trying to, make it as warm and as welcoming as we can. Some of the other things that often come up is garbage and how garbage is handled in plazas of this nature. It's all internal within the building, so the tenants will basically put it in a garbage room, and then the garbage is privately picked up and basically removed from the site. So that's basically all I would like to explain at this point. Thank you.
And if you would like to hear Mr. Oldham walk you through the intersection design again, I can call him up, but this was the same slide. So thank you very much. We're happy to take any questions.
Before we start, are there any registered speakers that are waiting in the wings?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't believe anybody has registered. I'm just looking in the back just to see if our production desk can confirm. Nothing. We have no registered speaker for these two applications at this time. If you would like to entertain questions to members of council, I think that would be a good time.
Members of council, are there questions before we move forward? Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much for this, and thank you for everything that you've done to make this a little bit more what the community was looking for. Ever since I've been on council, that community has been asking for exactly this type of thing, someplace with a bank or a small grocery store, drugstore, that type of thing, and saying that they want this first. So I appreciate how everything that you've said about encouraging this retail thing to go first, looking at the traffic patterns. Residents were worried about the traffic on Crimson King with that extra light. That's going to take a lot of that traffic off of there. The buffering, the overall look of the buildings, I think is very nice. I'm very pleased how there's been a lot of attention to not having what you typically think of the back of these buildings look like with the dumpsters and the loading docks and everything else. There's been a lot of attention to that. I'm very pleased with that. And also with the first site, removing that industrial manufacturing and looking for more benign uses. I know when we've spoken about this, you've thrown out some ideas of the types of things that could go in there. And ever since then, as I drive through Newmarket, Aurora, and you see the sort of more warehousing type of buildings, and I see things like Pulsar's Gymnastics and Tumble Tots and Pickleball, and I mean, there was a bird store and a furniture store and a play space. So there's a lot of things that could go in there that would really serve the community. And I would ask you to try and really try and track some of those type of businesses. That would be a huge asset to the community. So I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to thank you for how far we've come on this and making it something that will be a benefit to the community. And I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Are there questions from members of council? Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to our presenters, I think Councillor Carruthers said it well. You've been very responsive to their concerns and through them the residents' concerns. So I think that's appreciated. I just wanted to clarify when traffic exits from Crimson Way, will there be traffic lights there on Yonge Street, or is it just?
I'll let Mr.
Or is it
Oldham.
just going to be managed?
Sorry, through you, Mrs. Mayor. So, sorry, you were speaking at Crimson King and Yonge itself. There are existing signals. From the site to Crimson King, no, there will not be traffic signals. But the traffic that will come from the north site to Crimson King will be the non-truck uses. The truck uses will use the access to Yonge Street, the new signalized access to Yonge Street. For the southern block, the access to Yonge will be a right in, right out, given its proximity to the Crimson King intersection.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Johns, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just one quick comment, and it's a comment as opposed to a question. I just wanted to reinforce the thanks to Councillor Carruthers and Councillor Foster. I did attend that public meeting that was over a year ago, and the feeling of what that was then when looking at the renderings and understanding the uses versus what has been presented today is you can see the work and effort that's been put into it, and I think that the community is going to benefit from that. And so just as a side comment, I feel like, even though I've been a councillor for 2 years, I feel like the watercolor renderings or the renderings and I feel like we've been seeing that for like 30 or 40. I feel like we can get to a point where we can take all that data and just put it into a system. And so instead of us trying to imagine what it would feel like, I feel like these meetings will eventually go into us walking, yes, there's the tree, it feels like this, and you can see this, because we're all sitting here trying to imagine, but I imagine that technology has caught us up to the fact that we don't need to be imagining anymore. We can just be living and feeling it before it comes to fruition, and I hope that we can get to that day soon. So thank you.
Are there other questions, comments this time? I'm not seeing any. Given that we've dealt with both items, we will now consider the proposed recommendation for each of the applications. And could I have a mover and a seconder, please? For this, just for the first one, Councillor Leahy, Councillor Carruthers. Be it resolved that the Development Services Memorandum dated June 24th, 2000, sorry.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I didn't mean to stop you midstream, but in the past, we've asked if there were members of the public who wanted to speak. So if they haven't registered, but they heard something tonight that made them want to address, that's the purpose of the meeting, and I think we missed that step. So I just,
Thank you.
before we pass all of these resolutions, I just want to make sure that the members of the public who've been so patient with us and in listening to this, if there was something that they wanted to come to the microphone and share with us, this is their opportunity.
This
And
is your chance.
And of course, if something occurs to them later, or they're looking online and they have some thoughts, then they can also share that with our staff. But I just wanted to make sure that that opportunity was provided to people, even if they hadn't planned to speak.
Thank you very much. My mistake. Anyone who is wanting to speak, now is your chance. Come up to the microphone. It's hard to hear you from back there. Welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Frances Sabatini. I live in the neighborhood just behind the stormwater management. So I want to say thank you for increasing the landscape and overall architecture of the development. And I'm not sure at what stage we are, but I'm not sure if there's further development, but I think, I'm always interested if we can push it a little further, make it warmer. I think it is really great, but I think also just the elevation of the buildings relative to the elevation of the neighborhood nearby, and just being mindful of that. But I think overall it's come a long way, and thank you for that. But yeah, just want to make sure it feels like home still. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing with us. Is there anyone else that might want to come ahead, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Neil. I live in the same neighborhood. I just moved a few months ago, this particular neighborhood. So looking at that, when I received one day this particular notice, so I thought, oh, this is a good opportunity to go and see everyone over here. And that today I made it, and I thought, let's sit and listen to you all. So great presentation, really appreciate. Thank you for that. But I have a few questions from the technicality perspective, the structure which we are building and all those things. So they mentioned about the warehouse, and I have more concern on little bit on the what type of traffic will be flowing in that particular warehouse establishment. Whether there will be a 53 footers will be coming over there with the trailers in the residential area on the Crimson, Drive, or the normal usage of that particular area, how high those structures will be, typically like an industrial, setup like that. So a few things were, triggering me. So I thought, I will just put up if I can get some answers on that. So probably that will make me a little more comfortable that what decision I took a year ago to come to this side. So that will help me out on that. So if anyone can support on that, I will be grateful. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Would you like to address anything at this time?
Madam Mayor, I just want to confirm, yes, the site at the north does consider 53-foot trailers, but very specifically, as Tony pointed out, they're centered in the middle of the site, and they would be entering and exit the site through Yonge Street. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other people coming to speak, I will move along in the agenda. Moved by Councillor Leahy and seconded by Councillor Crothers. Be it resolved that the Development Services Memorandum dated June 24th, 2025, entitled Proposed Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Northeast Corner of Highway 11 and Crimson King Way with Samuel Lount Development Corporation Phase 2, file OPA 2404 and ZBA 2502, related file SPA 2510 be received, and that the presentation from the applicant be received as well. There is a third clause, the presentation from the applicant been received, that comments received at this statutory public meeting be addressed by the Development Services Planning Branch in a comprehensive report to a future council meeting date. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We have another motion here. Be it resolved that the Development Services Memorandum dated June 24th, 2025, entitled Proposed Zoning Bylaw Amendment Southeast Corner of Highway 11 and Crimson King Way, Samuel Lount Development Corporation, Phase 3, ZBA 2507 be received, and that the presentation from the applicant be received. That comments received at this public planning meeting be addressed by the Development Services Planning Branch in a comprehensive report to a future council meeting date. All those in favor?
I'll move it. Councillor Carruthers will move also.
We've got enough movers here. We're good. Good? Yes. Pardon me? All those in favor? And that's carried. Staff, we've moved along, and we are now at the third application, and I'm wondering if staff could please introduce it.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Purpose of this memo and presentation today is to run council through a community design plan application made to the town of East Gwillimbury. The community design plan is part of the Green Lane secondary plan, and it resides on the northwest corner of Green Lane and Yonge Street. And the community design plan process is in place to help us outline the location, size, and character of those residential areas, as well as any kind of institutional, commercial employment sites needed, and where roads go, school blocks go, parks go. So we have here today Ray Duhamel from the Jones Consulting Group, who is the planner on file, to present to council today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Good to have you with us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and the public. My name is Ray Duhamel with the Jones Consulting Group, and I'm presenting this evening on behalf of the Northwest Green Lane Landowners Group. And I have a presentation, if I could go through that now, and then be happy to answer any questions you may have. The next slide, please, whoever's controlling it. Great. So this slide shows the ownership within the Northwest Green Lane area, which is distinct an area from the rest of the Green Lane area on the east side of Yonge. And so if you can see that contextually, this is Yonge Street on right here, and this is Green Lane West. And so the property outlined in red is the overall secondary plan area for the Northwest Green Lane area, which I'm sure everyone around the table is familiar with. And then there's the individual ownerships within, individual ownerships within the Green Lane secondary plan area. And of all of them, there's, as you can see, Beachway Developments is at the north, which is up at the top end of the plan. And there's North Market Holdings. There's Young Green Lane GP Inc., which is the Rice Group. And then there's Sundial Homes. And then in addition to that, we've planned for and included within the overall area, although they're non-participants, there's an existing church and a small property at the intersection of Yonge and Green Lane. Next slide, please. I'm sure everyone's driven by here many times. I know I certainly do on a regular basis. This picture at the top left corner kind of illustrates the current flavor of the land. It's agriculturally used, generally speaking. And then some surrounding context is existing dwellings on the south side, and then there's a lot of commercial uses in the immediate vicinity at this intersection. And then the top right slide, there's a heritage home at 474 Yonge, which is proposed to be relocated actually over to Bathurst Street. So, next slide, please. So there's a long history to this, and I haven't been involved from the beginning, so you haven't seen my face here before, but it's a pleasure to be here. This started back in 2013, and so I came on board on this file in 2019. And so a whole lot of work was done before I stepped in, and I had to immediately immerse myself in a lot of history and a lot of backstory on how we got to where we are. But effectively, pre-consultation and the beginnings of this began in 2013, and just easily going through the kind of chronology here. In 2016, there was a funding agreement signed with the municipality to pre-fund a lot of technical studies in support of the secondary plan, if you can recall those points. And then there was an actual, a separate official plan amendment application filed in 2016 for the Northwest Green Lane area. And then onto a public meeting in 2018, the official plan amendment adopted in 2018. And then there were minutes of settlement at an LPAT hearing, which is now called the Ontario Land Tribunal. And 2019 is when I showed up. And that's when we really got into the details of the community design plan. So step one has been a lot of meetings with your staff. They've been great. Even though there's been some changing in your staff, I can say consistently throughout the process, your staff have been very helpful to allow us to get up to speed and work through the various historical components and then how to move forward. So it's been really, really good. Jack's carrying on that torch really well. So grateful for that. But ultimately, the starting point was, okay, we want to proceed now with the community design plan as envisioned once the secondary plan was adopted, and effectively puts kind of bubbles and generic line work on a plan. But the next step, this community design plan, the best way I describe it for you is it's a master plan. It lays a lot more detail. What's the exact location and the configuration of the schools and the parks? What's the road geometry? Where are the exact entrance points out onto Yonge and Green Lane? Where's the exact limits of the natural heritage system? That's the type of specific detail that we get into at the community design plan stage. And really, what is a community design plan, or what is a master plan? Well, it's not an actual application of the Planning Act. Normally, I'm standing before you and we're talking about an actual zoning bylaw amendment or a plan of subdivision or a site plan application. But what's unique about this is we're setting the table for those future applications now. So rather than, if you can imagine what we did, I've been doing this for 30 years. So a long time ago, we'd have a secondary plan, and then a lot of the individual landowners would fend for themselves, and they'd figure out, well, I think there's a school on my land, and this is what I'll do about it. But this is a much better and improved way to work through the process. So you've got a secondary plan, which is your objectives and your goals and your policies, and then you're going to work towards site plan applications and subdivision applications and zoning applications. The middle step is, does this work? Let's get into the technical details and make sure that all the high-level details have been properly thought through. So we don't put it on the back of an individual landowner at a subdivision stage and go, why didn't we think about this at the broader level? So it's a really useful tool overall to master plan communities like this. This isn't a small commercial site. This is a much bigger parcel of land. I didn't actually say the area at the beginning of this presentation, but about 285 acres of land. So quite a bit smaller than the rest of the Green Lane secondary plan area, but substantive enough that it benefits from this master planning process. So we spent the years 2019 and 20 sorting out we did all this work as part of the secondary plan, but there's going to be more work needed for this community design plan. What is that? So that's some traffic studies, that's mobility studies, that's looking at servicing and stormwater management, really the guts of how does this overall community work. And so that's what we spent the 19 and 20. Then we pre-consulted with staff. We had a draft community plan. We sat down, rolled up our sleeves. What do you think? And they came up with ideas and suggestions and requests, and we made those adjustments. And then we got into the weeds of actually doing all the detailed technical work. That's taken quite a few years to get to where we are now. And then this year we submitted our community design plan. It was a big hooray because we got the plan in after a lot of time. So projects like this are, in my experience, they're generational, quite frankly. They take a long time to plan, they take a long time to work through the details, and they'll take time to construct. And so, it's a longer lens that we're looking at things as opposed to some, infill sites or other, types of developments that you might otherwise have experience with. Next slide, please. So this is your secondary plan, and as you can imagine, what I was talking about, bubbles and conceptual line work. Well, that's exactly what this is. Again, Young Street and Green Lane. So it conceptually shows your collector road network. It conceptually shows your schools and your parks and your low-density areas, which are yellow, and your medium-density areas, which are different types of purple. And there's a high-density block, which is brown. And then this large blue area is a commercial mixed-use area. And then there's a residential mixed-use area. So you have these broad categories. But as you can imagine, if individual developers came in with individual subdivisions based on that plan, there may be some lack of coordination between landowners and different things. And that's what the community design plan is intended to sort through. So if you go to the next slide, which is just zoning, I put that in because it's consecutive with your official plans. There would be individual zoning applications for all of these lands because they're just basically zoned rural, open space, and institutional right now. So next slide. So this is the work that has been culminated in the many years of working on through this file ever since 2013. Again, Young Street and Green Lane West. What we have is the dashed lines represent the individual ownerships, which I've explained previously. And then we have a series of collector roads, one that travels east-west and comes out to to Green Lane. And we also have an east-west major collector road at the top end of the plan that'll ultimately connect to Bathurst. And then we have a north-south collector road here and another north-south collector road here. So those are the road connections. And we've gone beyond just conceptually showing them on the plan. We've had an Ontario Land Surveyor go out and survey the actual intersections, make sure that those alignments are properly aligned and work. And then we've gone through that to the stage of laying out the individual land uses. So if you can see these colors of brown and yellow and orange, those are more your ground-oriented housing. So that reflects your single detached dwellings, your townhouse dwellings, and your back-to-back dwellings. And so you'll see that up in the top left-hand corner, the singles, there's a broad mixture of uses in this area with townhouses and back-to-backs and singles. And then you have a medium density block here. And then outside of the plan area, because infrastructure is allowed in the Greenbelt plan, we have half of a stormwater pond and a full storm pond and a pumping station. And then the real key focus point of the Northwest Greenland Secondary Plan is its relationship to Yonge Street. And that's where the mixed use areas are, and that's where the higher densities have been planned from the get-go to go. So if you think in two broad strokes, there's the residential mixed use, and then there's commercial mixed use. Well, what's the difference? It's mixed use. Well, the residential is effectively your 3 to, it could be up to any number of stories, actually. I don't think there's actually a specific height limitation, but it's medium density to high density as the primary use supported by commercial. So that's what the mixed use area here is. The bigger area to the south here is primarily commercial with high density residential. So that's where you're getting ground floor commercial and taller buildings built above that. And that's where you're getting everything from hotels to a variety of service commercial uses and other retail-based commercial uses. And then there's a storm pond. By virtue, we prefer not to go there, but the water has to flow the way the water has to flow. So that's where that storm pond is there. And then we have some higher density uses that are basically designed to co-link in with the commercial mixed use area. And this is the overall number that it's just under 7,000 units. That's a lot. And it's designed though it's heavy on the unit count in the area where your master planning and your secondary plan was looking for it. You want higher densities built along Yonge Street. That's how this plan is designed. And your ground-oriented development is in behind. And you're looking at a mixture roughly based on this community design plan of about 35% is more your ground-oriented development, and then about 65% is more your higher density development. And again, what the community design plan is, there's going to be a lot of individual applications in here, and there's going to be revisions to the actual internal layout of those mixed-use areas. It's more conceptual now because the community design plan, we're trying to make sure that it works. Does the traffic work? Does the sewage work? Does the stormwater management work? We need to, at the community design stage, make sure that we can plan for those ultimate unit counts. They may not be developed exactly at that high a density, but there's parameters within your official plan which have to be adhered to, and there'll be a series of individual site plan applications along that area that will ultimately see that area developed. I think that's it for that slide. If we could go on to the next one. I promise I won't be too much longer. In case anybody wants some good night reading, I encourage you that there's all kinds of technical work that was completed previously for the secondary plan, and then there has been a whole bunch of additional technical work that we worked out with your staff on. Some of them are updates, some of them are brand new studies, but a lot of work went into this submission, and we right now we're starting to receive feedback from various departments, the region, and that feedback will continue, and we're going to be working with your staff to work through any detailed technical comments that come through. I think that's good on that slide. I did mention that this is not a Planning Act application, but we still have to consider the Planning Act and the provincial planning statement and the growth plan and the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. So 2 quick slides to say that, our submission has considered those things in the broadest, in the context of everything that we've put together for the town. So just because it's not a planning application, we didn't say, well, the heck with it all, we won't worry about it. That wasn't how our approach was. And so the next slide is just going on again about the Greenbelt Plan and the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. So we believe we have regard to the Planning Act, and we have consistent with the provincial planning statement, and we conform to the Greenbelt Plan and the growth and the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. And then we should be getting to the end. So again, just under 7,000 units of a wide variety of land use types and different types of residential units. There's park, and actually you can see here there's a main central park area and 2 flanking school sites on either side. That was a major departure, I wouldn't say major, but it was a departure from the secondary plan. The secondary plan originally visioned that you'd have 2 parks and 2 schools that were separated. And in working with your staff came back to us and said, we'd really like us to pursue a more of a campus setting where you have a larger park instead of 2 smaller parks and 2 schools that are flanking that park. So we worked hard to achieve what staff's desires were for, because the secondary plan originally didn't intend that. But this is the good point of a community design plan, as we're getting into the specifics about the shapes of parks and the shapes and configurations of schools, we can work on creating that basically that campus setting that staff were looking for. And we've got lots of studies. They'll be available for review if any members of the public are watching this and they want to review the traffic report or the mobility plan or the financial study or retail market or whatever they'd like to review and provide any comments. Happy to do that. And the last slide is just my contact information. If anybody had any questions specifically of me after this meeting, or any members of the public, or want to reach out or just email me, we're happy to answer any questions or just engage and help siphon those comments and materials back to municipal staff. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. There are questions from members of council. Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Councillor Crone had his question first, and then I would like to ask one. I usually steal your thunder, so you go first.
All right. Through you, Madam Mayor. Really impressive stuff you have here. If everything went along smoothly and according to plan, when do you think you'd be breaking ground?
Well, I can tell you that outside of the immediate market challenges, the owners are very anxious to proceed. I think something I didn't mention, and I was remiss in doing that, is it really comes down to the YDSS and the timing of it, because they've pushed that timing. They've said 2025, which seems optimistic, obviously, since we're in the middle of that, all the way through to 2031. So if that's the window, that's what we're working with. We have to find out when that happens. And then what's the first and second phases of the YDSS? How many units are we actually talking about? We don't know today. So we're keen to proceed. You have quite amazing community that you're going through. You're just going through your community secondary plan. You've got a lot of growth that's anticipated over the future. We're happy to be, in a position where we're ready to go. Hopefully, that's our goal, is to be ready to go when that servicing is available. And we're crossing our fingers and hoping it's sooner than later, but we'll find out, like all of us, I suppose.
I feel like maybe the thunder could clear the air and we wouldn't have so much humidity and heat. But Mr. Duhamel, thank you very much for keeping my attention after a long day of meetings, and I appreciate very much the work that you've put into this. For better or worse, I've been here for the entire planning period that you identified. So I have had the benefit of seeing multiple renderings of people's visions for this intersection and this stretch of land, mainly when the Rice Group owned the whole piece of it. And at the time, there were grand ideas. There were convention centers and hotels, and now I'm seeing 7,000 units of residential homes. And I'm not seeing the larger scale community uses that I've seen in the past. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that at this point. I don't see anything that's exclusively commercial or institutional other than the schools and the existing church. I'm seeing mixed use commercial and not necessarily exclusively community services and businesses.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Roy DiClemente, could we, is it possible to put the presentation back up? If that's not an inconvenience? I just wanted to share the community design plan. So if, Director...
I had some trouble trying to figure out what color meant what, because maybe it's the time of day, or it could just be my age. I didn't bring my reading glasses, so I can't figure out what those the little palette on the upper left meant for most of those. I was able to kind of determine that it was mostly mixed use.
Yeah, so to answer your question, the broader colors are just to give you an immediately a visual representation of the variations of the types of units and uses across the plan. So it's kind of a quick snapshot to say, hey, there's a park, there's some schools, these are different types of residential units. This is the commercial. So we used one color because that's your designation in your secondary plan. But this is where we actually have a hotel planned. And it's right on the, like, it's such a small detail, and I obviously was remiss in not going into more detail about this. But there is a hotel plan, and there's many thousands of square feet of commercial space that are built in for the commercial service portion of this. So that's built right into the plan. Rice Group didn't bait and switch in any way. The plan is still there. The actual design and physical site plan application, that can't come until we're well past this stage. The servicing has been sorted out, and then they may come in with a block subdivision plan. They may come in with a site plan, but there's a lot of development proposed, and it's going to take a period of time to deliver on that. But it's not just 7,000 residential units. It's a lot of this is commercial and residential mixed use. So you've got in commercial on the ground floor, and it's residential above. Oh, good. There's market conditions, financing. There's a whole lot of considerations that are ultimately going to form this generational plan over its life cycle. But what we're trying to accomplish today is presenting what we think the intent of that your previous councils, if you were on them, what you intended when you developed the secondary plan, how that manifests into the actual details on a master plan, so that we can set the table and everybody else can move forward when they're servicing with individual applications, so that you don't receive an individual subdivision application and go, well, why didn't you think of the broader area? That's why we're here now, and I think it's a really useful time to have these conversations. So hopefully that answers your questions.
It certainly does help. Thank you for reassuring me. I guess ultimately, when I look at these plans, I look to see that there's a vision, that there's placemaking happening, that there's something unusual and special and unique about each kind of neighborhood that we're creating, because this is essentially a neighborhood. And I'm not seeing a great deal of kind of vision from that perspective. Absolutely, now that you've explained that what's happening in the light blue quadrant, that's good, because it does sort of match with what my understanding was back in 2000 and blank. But, just for me, I look at this and I go, okay, well, is there a roundabout? Is there, what kind of, this doesn't look like a very big park. The elementary schools that are adjacent to each other, I understand the campus concept, but we also have to keep in mind school drop-off and parents who refuse to walk their children to school and decide that they're going to drive them down the street. And so we end up creating unsafe conditions with kids darting out into traffic, and we've got a busy road that's going to be a pretty big collector coming east-west.
Correct.
So we have to keep that in mind as well, right? And obviously those happen at the site plan or the subdivision level of things, but at the higher level, at the community design plan, I want to see something that's inspiring. And for me, this is partly inspiring, but not greatly inspiring. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Taking off on that, I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing a lot of units, 7,000 units. That's more than, I know when we do mailings in Holland Landing, that's more than Holland Landing, River Drive Park, Harvest Hills all put together. And I'm seeing one park that's shared by 2 schools. So if I'm a mom with a baby and a toddler and I want to take them to the park during the day, there is nowhere for me to go here. I look at, in Holland Landing, we have a couple of community centers at least. We have 3 community centers, really, Harvest Hills, River Drive Park, and the Holland Landing Community Center. There is no community center here that I can see. There's no place for a library. All these things that build community, I'm not seeing them here. This should be walkable to a park for everybody. If it's a small park, that's fine, but this should be walkable to a park, and a park in between 2 schools where kids are out at recess, and that is not someplace you're taking a toddler. And I'm looking how far it is, if you put the map back up, how far it is from the bottom left, people who are living in those houses, all the way up to that park in the center. It's an awfully long ways. To me, that's not a walkable community. That's not getting to know your neighbors and building that sense of community in a community park or community center. So this is a lot of units and not a lot of public space.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Crothers. I take your points very well. The key about the park is that you're looking at land and wondering how large that park is. That park is designed basically on a line roughly like this. If you can follow the cursor there, the red dot. That was where the land was requested by staff, and then the staff indicated that the land on the right side of that line would be provided in cash in lieu to provide broader public benefit for the community. So that was the comments that we received through the staff feedback at the pre-consultation stage in 2022, as was the creation of the campus, which was not what our original design idea was, but we supported the idea of creating that campus environment. So it does create a greater distance of walkability towards that. Don't ignore effectively that there is a community space or environmental space right beyond the limit of this plan. And then all of these, there will be related amenity spaces that are built into these developments as well that are not just a public park. They're going to be amenity areas as part of a site plan approval or condominium approval that will exist as well. But we do take our lead from staff in terms of how to design the overall plan, and the feedback that was very specific at the pre-consultation stage. That doesn't mean that there can't be adjustments to the park size or others as a result, and take less cash in lieu and have a larger park size if that's ultimately what council or staff are directing as part of this review process. That's why we're here, effectively to hear your feedback. If this was written in stone and we were saying this is the way it's going to be, then I think this would be a much more difficult meeting. But quite frankly, we've done a lot of work to try to take what your secondary plan said and then what your staff have said and marry them together and work together with a lot of technical work. But if we didn't get it right, if there's something that needs to be adjusted as it relates to park, I think if we, a more clear concept plan of the area in blue, which we already have, but provided a more clear context with some color to make sure that it's more obvious of what's proposed. Those are pieces that we can work towards, helping work with staff to see that outcome delivered.
Thank you. It's not just parks I'm talking about, and I do agree with the campus model. That is how the school boards have been building schools, and so it's nice to have a park in between the schools for sure, but I'm looking at, like I said, down the bottom left-hand corner, where are those people going to their community park? Where is their community park? Where is the community center? Where is the library? Where's the services that these residents are going to need? Because this is as big as bigger than all of Ward 1 is right now. So if you're doubling the number of residents in Ward 1, that's a double the amount of community spaces as well. And this is not doing that. So I hear that you're taking your lead from staff. Staff are taking advice from council. Council has said walkable communities, and this to me is not walkables. Thanks.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm mindful of the time, and you've been up there a while. So hopefully I'm going to send you away with some work for someone else to do. I want to talk a little bit about the Heritage House that's on the north property there.
Sure.
I have heard more plans and been updated more times on what was going to happen with that Heritage home than I care to count. The house is sitting there now largely neglected. Soon I expect there won't be a heck of a lot left if it's neglected too much longer. I would like to see a concrete plan on what's going to happen with that house and when, so we can actually sink our teeth into a little bit about what's going to happen with that place. The idea of moving it over to Bathurst Street is, I believe the Heritage Advisory Committee was okay with that. However, we heard that plan a long, long time ago. So again, I understand that you're working to get to this point where it kind of makes sense to do those other things, but I would really love to see something come back to us that's a little bit concrete, or even present to the Heritage Advisory Committee some concrete plans on what's going to happen with that heritage home.
Please.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Foster. That was a question that staff or a member of the public had raised prior to coming to tonight. And so I had a very specific conversation with the landowner to understand what the plan is. And what they laid out for me, which makes sense in my world, but I'll certainly take back again for additional conversations, is that in order to move that house today, they would have to basically move it down Yonge Street and Green Lane. And it would be practically impossible to do. Like, it's just like closing everything and the hydro lines, it just couldn't be done. So what happens in the interim? Well, the plan is to try to keep people out of it, because people keep breaking in, they keep damaging it. So they've actually really damaged it. I've seen pictures of how they've really done a lot of damage to the house, to the point where it's not livable. So they keep trying to call the police. They file order. They call. They board it up. People break in and do something again. But the house can't be moved until Bathurst is built. And when was Bathurst going to be built? Well, it won't be built until this plan moves forward, the individual subdivisions move forward, and then the servicing. So I'm afraid I don't know that there's that I have a great answer for you that can be concrete, because I don't know all the details about the servicing timeline. But if the servicing timeline is 2025 to 2031, and that's the window where subdivision approvals can be obtained, then that's the window that the house would be milled. But I realize that it's 2025 now. That's 6 years of, more damage could be done to that house. But it's just not practically able to move it down Yonge and Green Lane. So we're at the landowner's a bit of a challenge state.
So if I might, Madam Mayor, and again, you're in the business, I'm not, but I would suggest that, if there's any way to move forward with moving it on your own property, on Beachway's property there, and building a road that would support it to move there, that you're going to leave there as a road anyway, might be a way around it. But again, I'm talking through my hat here. I'll just leave it to you. But we would certainly like to see something happen. I think that's designated also,
Yes.
if I remember right.
It
so
is, correct.
It would be a shame if it sat there too much longer.
Understood. We'll take it away. Absolutely.
Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Just to add to that, our community had plans. There was another landowner who had responsibility for a heritage home, and they were going to move it from Second Concession and Green Lane to this location. So they were going to come up Second Concession along Mount Albert Road and down Leslie Street. A predecessor of Mr. Brake here once said that anything can be engineered. So where there's a will, there's a way. And your client, I'm assuming your client is the landowner whose responsibility that house has a responsibility to this community to make sure that that piece of our heritage is protected. And so unfortunately, he's going to have to do what he needs to do sooner rather than later, because the structure simply can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Johns, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you, can I get a better understanding? There was a comment when Councillor Carruthers was talking about the parkland size, and you made a comment about you said, well, there's other amenities. Like, obviously in my head, I am picturing the wood lot as it, on that, which would be the west side. Can you better describe what that white space is behind that square by the stormwater management there?
Through your worship to Councillor Jones, is this the area you're speaking to here? Yeah, so this is within the green belt here. If you would go back to maybe the second slide, if whoever's controlling the remote, you can see the aerial photograph. So this is the area that exceeds outside that area right here. So this is effectively the environmental system in here. So that's a walkable area potentially. And then my other comment was about, well, there's cash in lieu of parkland. The municipality can use that where they deem fit, as well as amenity spaces that would be constructed as part of those individual development applications.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, if it would be allowed to ask some follow-up. So recognizing the boundaries that are existing sitting there, does the ownership of those lands extend down beyond the boundary lines?
It does.
It does. Okay. So is there a plan to leverage the opportunity of that green space with tree planting initiatives or trail projects or opportunities to utilize that? Is that integrated or, sorry, I'm tired too. Is it a part of the thinking on the wider plan? Because it seems to me that it has been left out of that thought process when you said, oh, we're creating a central park when you use the campus, but really to me, that western park is right there and an incredible opportunity that should be leveraged for the community benefit. So I'm just wondering if that has been contemplated.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Johns, a takeaway, we haven't created a master trails plan, but I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm hearing the comments as well from Councillor Carruthers about the parkland, so we'll take that away as additional working items to see what our responses and working with staff on those points.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you now understand we have a council that are passionate about
That's great.
older homes and large lots. And I would hope that after this meeting at some point, there's an opportunity for perhaps even a couple of us that may be able to sit down with you and talk to you about the kinds of things that drive us every day. Homes that are 100+ years old, gardens that are still growing vegetables that were planted 20 years ago. And it just makes a difference with a municipality like East Gwillimbury. We're not the same, and those are some of the things that we cherish as time goes on. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us, for sure.
Thank you.
Now, I think we had someone else who wanted to speak. Am I correct?
No.
Yes. Do we have any registered speakers for this application?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we have not received anyone who has registered. Perhaps we can ask if members of the audience have any comments that they would like to provide.
You've all been here for quite some time, so you know how the process works. If you'd like to come up and say a few words, we'd be pleased to hear from you as well. New subdivisions coming into our community make changes many times. Most of the time, they're very good, but sometimes not quite as good as we had hoped. So if you have the idea of coming and speaking, or if you want to put some pen on paper and share it with us in a written form, we'd certainly be glad to get back to you as well. I think everybody's thinking. Be it resolved that the Development Services Memorandum dated June 24th, 2025, entitled Community Design Plan Application Northwest of Yonge Street and Green Lane Public Meeting File CDP 2501 be received, and that the presentation from the applicant be received, and that comments received at this public planning meeting be addressed by the Development Services Planning Branch in a comprehensive report to a future council meeting date. I think that's all I have here. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Hay?
Councillor John's happy to second that.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in and speaking with us tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think. Thank you. Members of council, would you like to move through or take a 10-minute break or stretch and come back?
Power through.
Power through. We have correspondence for consideration. It's correspondence from P. Sadwick, Chair, River Drive Park Community Group, dated June 2nd, 2025, requesting memorial tribute request for L. Sparing. Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make sure that we don't just receive this, that we give our staff some direction to consult with Pam Sedgwick, who is the chair of the RDP Community Group. They do have an event coming up on August the 23rd, which she originally indicated they would like to have this done for, so they could do a presentation a little bit for that day. There might be some other ideas that they may have, so I just want to make sure the staff reaches out to her to consult and decide what the best thing is to do. And we certainly would have time. Mr. Karmazin had indicated that we would have time to get it done by that event in August if that is the plan. So if we could move forward with that, I'd be happy.
Go ahead, please.
I'm happy to second that. Hopefully the clerk can work on some wording for us. I don't think this needs to come back to council. I think if we can just send direction to staff to work with the chair of RDP Community Group to have an appropriate tribute for Mr. Spearing, that would be fine by me. I think that we've talked with Mr. Karmazin, and I think he understands what we're looking for and the need to make sure that it aligns with what the community group is looking for. So, Madam Clerk, I'm not sure if you have some wording you want to put up.
Through Madam Mayor, just bear with us for a moment. Madam Mayor, members of council, the section is highlighted in blue. Let us know if that is satisfactory. So this has been changed. This is the change, Madam Mayor.
That council requests staff work with the chair of the River Drive Park Community Group to determine an appropriate memorial tribute.
I'm wondering if we want to put the word execute in there. We want them just to determine it, but we want to make it so.
We can massage this a little bit. That council requests staff work with the chair of the River Drive Park Community Group to determine and execute an appropriate memorial tribute. All those in favor? That's carried. We're getting near the home end here. We have item J, notice of motion. correct?
Madam Mayor, I'd like
Please.
to put a motion forward to waive procedure and deal with this tonight.
Happy to say.
Thank you. Councillor Cronin will second that. All those in favor? It's carried. I'm reconsidering.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion that council is considering at this time is a motion to reconsider. So perhaps I can ask our team to put the motion on the screen so that we can review that. The intent of the debate is the reconsideration of that motion.
Thank you. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to speak to the motion while staff are putting it on the screen. This is simply a matter that I continue to stew about for some weeks, and felt that it was important that that if there were documents that were in the public interest, and I felt that that might be the case, that we would reconsider releasing them into the public domain. And so that is simply what this is a request for my colleagues to reconsider releasing information that we had received in a closed session that would require us to waive solicitor-client privilege and bring it into open session, because I felt that it was in the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you. This, the motion that's being asked to be reconsidered is something that we have already voted on. It's something that we have reconsidered, and it did not pass again. So it's already been defeated twice by this council. I'm not sure what the point of bringing it back a third time is. There's many motions that I've lost that I continue to stew about, and if we're going to bring this forward for a third time, then I think it sets a precedent that any of us who are still stewing about motions that we lost, we could bring it forward as a notice of motion, and I don't think that's something that we really want to do. Now, I know we don't use Robert's rules, but there's a very good clause in Robert's rules that says that the only time you can bring something back for reconsideration is somebody who is on the prevailing side, and that stops people who are upset that they lost their motion to bring it back repeatedly. This would be the third time we would be voting on this, and I think that's inappropriate, and I don't think it's good use of council time.
Councillor Roy DiClemente?
For clarity, the request for reconsideration was made following the closed meeting that we had. It was a verbal request. I've simply put it in writing for us after there have been cooler heads that can prevail, and I completely respect the process if this request for reconsideration doesn't pass. But I felt that it was within my democratic rights to bring this forward, and I appreciate Councillor Leahy for supporting me in that initiative. Thank you.
Councillor Leahy, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. I agree that this is a point of democratic importance, that it's not often when we're voting on something that I respect the democratic process if it doesn't necessarily pass. However, because it took place in closed session, I think this adds an important element. I have received multiple inquiries from members of the public who wish to understand better what their taxpayer dollars are being spent on. And democracy is based on transparency and accountability and equality. And so for those reasons, I supported this motion being brought forward today. So I would like to ask that my fellow councillors reflect upon that and the big picture, and consider voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Question?
In the interest of the late hour, I just was moving that we call the question.
Through Madam Mayor again, the motion that you're contemplating is the reconsideration of something that council's previously decided on. It's been moved by Councillor Roy DiClemente, seconded by Councillor Leahy, And at this time, council is simply voting on the reconsideration. So Councilor Roy DeClemente has called the question, so at this time, you're entertaining the vote.
All those in favor, raise your hands high, please. Those opposed, raise your hands high, please. Did you count? Pardon me? The motion is defeated. We are at item K1, and we're just have concluded that, and we are now at K2, Joint Development Services in Parks and Recreation and Culture, Administrative Penalty Bylaw Amendment, Tree Protection Bylaw in relation to item M4. Staff, could you please provide an overview for this report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report's fairly self-explanatory with regards to the administrative penalty system that we are enacting as a town in order to enforce our tree protection bylaw, and I'm happy to take questions from members of council at this point.
Are there any questions on this topic? Now's the time to say so. I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor Roy DeClemente.
Councilor John's happy to second.
John's happy to second that. All those in favor? That's carried. We're at item number 3, Development Services. Excuse me, appointment of hearing officers for the administrative penalty system. And could staff please provide us with an overview of this report?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This report is related to the one prior to it, in that we are seeking council's support for the appointment of hearing officers hearing and screening officers for bylaw 2023-85, and also to facilitate an agreement with the town of Newmarket for our APS system. And this will be for the next 2 years, I believe, with an ability for them to prolong for another 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? I'm not seeing any questions at this time. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone, Councillor Carruthers. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We are at item L, resolutions, and there are no resolutions at this time. I will move along to item M, and that is bylaws. We have 6 bylaws for consideration. Would you like to move them all together? If so, can I have a mover and a seconder?
Happy to move.
You're moving it?
Happy to move, yeah.
Yes, Councillor Crone. Thank you.
Sorry, I
Go
just, bylaw number 2025-036, I did not support the CWC recommendation, so I'm wondering if we can do M1, 2, and 4 first, and I'm happy to move or second, and then have number 3 done separately, please.
Just as an advisement, Madam Mayor, there was one additional bylaw in relation to the designation and repeal of the Howard House. So that's been added, so that's why there are 6 items. Councillor Roy DeClemente, for clarity, you're just asking to separate out number 3 at this time?
Yes, the bylaw number 2025-036 is the one I would like to separate out. I'm happy to, with all the others being bundled together. Thank you.
Okay, so Madam Mayor, would you like to vote on everything other than 036?
I believe that's the right way to move.
Sure. So you do have a mover, Councillor Crone. You do need a seconder on that. Councillor Roy.
Councillor Roy Clemente, thank you.
You need to vote on.
All those in favor? That's carried.
And now you're going to consider bylaw 2025-036.
Bylaw 2025-036 being a bylaw to amend a bylaw number 2018 as amended. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Leahy. Councillor Johns. Any comments? Concerns? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
You're on item N.
We are at item N, and that's other business. We have no business at this time unless someone has some that they're going to share. I don't see any. And so with that, we're moved to confirming bylaw. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Crone, Councillor Crothers. All those in favor? That's carried. We're at an adjournment at 8:34. Moved by Councillor Crone, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And they're carried. Thank you very much. That one should go down in the history book, I think, but